All right, everybody, welcome back to the Overwatch Collective podcast with Greg. This is season 8, episode 13, with Brian Lawrence, one of the Overwatch Collective's contracted therapists in the state of California. Brian, how are we doing today? Thanks for coming on.
Doing good. The weather here is in California. California has a lot of problems, but the weather is usually not one of them. So,
True, yeah, and I'm from Half Moon Bay and just came out to Louisiana in January, and the weather is a little different out.
a little different down south there.
A
Yeah.
little different, definitely. Well, I appreciate you having the time to come on the podcast. We're obviously trying to do a podcast with every single one of our therapists, so it really enhances the person's ability to ensure that the first therapy session with the person we connect them with is as much of a success as possible. So doing a podcast for 30, 45 minutes is a great way for them to just get to know you a little bit better other than social media or Psychology Today or your website, So definitely a nice tool to be able to have the podcast as well. For those of you that are listening, you can listen to our podcast on the Overwatch Collective app. It is currently free to download. We're almost at 1,000 users in that bad boy. Once we get enough, we're going to start getting advertisement space, which will bring in some revenue. So then we can put more money towards funding therapy for our first responder and veteran community. So go to your app store today, download it, please. Thank you very much. So Brian's father was 37 years as a firefighter, 3 years active duty military police, and then I don't know why you did this. You didn't follow in your father's footsteps, but you became a police officer where you did 30 years in Northern California at Union City Police Department, Brentwood Police Department, Pleasanton Police Department, retired out as a lieutenant. And now you are a therapist and you're able to help the community, which is pretty darn cool. And you're still doing crisis intervention training with the Oakland Police Department, pro bono sessions and taking care of them. And so what we're going to do in this episode is Brian's just going to do an intro of himself, talk about his past experience, why he's a good fit to be a therapist in our community, in addition to his 30 years of first responder experience and 3 years of military experience, and then talk about some common problems we're seeing in the community. So I'm out of breath. I'm done talking. Brian, take it away, please. Give us an introduction of yourself.
Absolutely. First off, thank you for having me. Thank you for everything that the Overwatch Collective does. It's a very, very important resource for first responders and their families. So I'm very, very grateful to your organization. As you said, my name is Brian Lawrence. I'm a licensed marriage family therapist here in California. I got licensed in 2021 post-career. I was raised in the Bay Area, graduated from high school in the mid 80s. I won't tell you what year, but you can probably start to count the rings on the tree and figure how old I am. College was not on my radar. I knew in high school that I wanted to go into the military and get involved in law enforcement. California, you couldn't be a police officer till 21. So I joined the Army, active duty for 3 years, had a contract to go to military police school. Did 3 years in the military police corps. I was stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Had a brief deployment to Central America. And that's really where some of my experiences with trauma for myself and for others really began. Although back then I didn't really put the pieces together. After a couple of years, I realized I didn't want to make the military my career, so I got out in 1987. And in those days, a lot of the agencies weren't hiring, so I put myself through the Modesto Police Academy and then got hired by the Union City Police Department. Worked there for 6 years, went to the Brentwood Police Department for a few years, and then I did my last 20 with the Pleasanton Police Department. Worked a lot of different assignments. One assignment I never did was a motor officer. Two reasons: one, natural point of rest on the side, but two, I don't think I would have looked good enough in the motor uniform to be to be picked up there. Investigations assignment, SWAT, the typical gamut. But I worked a lot with juveniles, worked a lot with families in crises, and then later on started working a lot with some multidisciplinary teams to deal with the seriously mentally ill in the community. Also during that time, folks that I served with in the military as well as law enforcement started passing away of suicide and alcohol use. And I actually knew more fellow soldiers and first responders that passed away of that, then died of actual duty-related deaths like shootings, traffic accidents, and what have you. So any death related to being a first responder is tragic. Obviously, not only to the first responder, but to the family themselves.
Mhm.
I've been fortunate to have a marriage. It'll be 34 years coming up this September if things keep going well, if my wife continues to tolerate me. Uh,
Yeah, that's awesome.
was able to raise two successful children. They decided not to go into the first responder field, which was great. But having had my own experiences, my own therapy, not only through the VA, but also as a police officer, really never really had that stigma with mental health. And then for myself, about 5 years before I retired, I figured 30 years of toting a gun was going to be enough. I didn't have it in me to go to another agency and decided to pursue licensure as a psychotherapist here in California. Since then, I've worked in a variety of settings, getting my hours. I actually worked in a custody setting at Santa Rita Jail here, which was actually a really good eye opener for me because a lot of the folks in there dealt with trauma as well. And then I eventually opened my own private practice. I work a lot with first responders, not exclusively. I'll see folks from a variety of backgrounds. But I'm on a couple of employee assistance program panels. Lately, I've been getting more and more referrals of first responders. I use cognitive behavior therapy. I'm pretty direct as a therapist. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. Many non first responders they prefer a different orientation, but for me, cognitive behavior therapy, working with trauma, it seems to fit well with the first responder field, and it's I had no idea when I retire what a satisfying next career that this would be for me. So it's for me, it's really an honor and a privilege to be able to help, and especially through organizations like the Overwatch Collectives.
Very cool. Yeah, thanks for the intro, and I think that's
Sure.
great to be able to have the actual first responder and military experience, and then get the training as a therapist, and then you have both, right? You have the training
Right.
and the actual lived experience. Where we have seen it before, where some people do think that, hey, I was a police officer for 10 years, so now I could be a first responder therapist, and we're like, we get it. You understand what it's like to be a cop, but you don't have that trauma informed training. You don't have
Right.
the work actually behind it. So it's pretty rare in my opinion, but I think it's truly incredible to have a therapist who has the prior firsthand experience and then gets the training and is like certified, you got the blessing, you're good. Because sometimes that's what people in our community want out of their therapist. They want somebody that was a prior firefighter, prior first responder. So I think it's great, and I'm finally happy that we're able to do this.
I am too. Thank you. Yes, many good folks that family members, some prior experience as first responders, definitely. One of the unique things I bring in is having been married for so long, things that my family had to deal with me and some of my experiences, things I won't get into in this podcast. But just being able to normalize the difficulty, not only the work related difficulties, but being able to come home and put on that different role as a father, a husband, or a wife, partner, whatever that looks like, and ways of looking at the world and life that I had to change for myself. But again, normalizing a lot of the difficulties that are out there for first responders and their families.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that's a challenge, right, for our first responder and military community. Both
Absolutely.
is the families and prioritizing the family, because you get so caught up in work that you kind of slack on the home front, and that's when we see the arguments, the divorces, the substance misuse. We have such a
Yes.
high rate for divorces in our community, with cheating, with substance misuses. So before we kind of get into those, I actually want
Sure.
to rewind just a little bit.
Sure.
So what's the best thing about being a therapist? I'm curious.
Oh, not going to staff meetings anymore. That's one of them. Really, it's so good, and for me, it's very healthy to have such a different role. After 33 years, you're only called to deal with a problem when someone's having their worst day, but to be part of that healing journey for folks. When I work with trauma, I tell all of my clients, don't feel compelled to tell me anything that you're not comfortable with. But I really see myself as someone that, if my client's willing to bear witness with them to what's happened, to be curious about it, and to not feel alone. Trauma tends to be experienced alone, my own included, in my history. And once I was willing to let others in and on this journey with me, the dragon kind of loses its teeth when it has. It's still out there, it's still lurking, but to not feel alone, and just it's such a privilege for folks to. I may be the first time they've ever called for a therapist. And because I have my own private practice, I have kind of an unwritten rule. If I can, I'll respond to a client within 24 hours. It's very important. I hear horror stories about people calling their
Mhm.
medical providers weeks, months to even get some sort of contact back, and that person may not reach out again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And so when clients reach out to see you to work with you, you do a 15-minute consultation call with them. And then are you in person or virtual? How does that work?
I'll do whatever a person's comfortable with. I actually prefer in person. I think
Yep.
so much more happens in the room. I have an office in downtown Pleasanton, so it's pretty convenient for a lot of the agencies around here.
Okay.
But if someone wants to do video or phone, perfectly fine. And it's not a hard 15 minutes. It's really as long as someone wants to talk to get an idea about how I might be able to help. And just to start to right away normalize the difficulty what that person's going through, and then be it an employee assistance program. Some folks will pay cash out of pocket. I also provide super bills, so some folks are able to reimburse through their insurance companies. But we definitely will do a little work on the fees to make sure people can get the help that they need. It's just so
Yeah.
important nowadays.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think one of the big things as we kind of transition into the employment assistance program, you've brought it up a few times, and I'm excited to touch on it and get your opinion. Being contracted with an employment assistance program, how do you think that's truly going, and what can we do better in our community? Like I've seen and heard it where departments and all these agencies kind of just care about money. So they'll contract with therapists that are not the best trained for our community because they don't want
Right.
to pay the 190 for a 50-minute session. So they're like, we'll do the 110 an hour, but our employees, they may not get the best therapist. And then with the insurance and the billing after, and I've heard a lot of stories where it's sometimes it seems like a check in the box, and it's quite the headache. So I'm curious to get your opinion on it.
Right. If it's okay to mention the two EAP programs, I work with Concern and Claremont EAPs. They're used by a lot of city and county agencies here. The experience with them has been very good. Depending upon the contract, some may get 6 sessions, some 10, some employees 20 sessions, depending upon which EAP program. But they're actually very easy to use. People can actually direct refer to me, or if they inquire through their EAP program, they'll send out an email blast to therapists that might be available. But generally, I get the authorization within 24 hours of when someone's reached out to the EAP program. And then I try to schedule, unless I'm out of town, I try to schedule within a few days, but definitely talk to that person within 24 hours to get something set up. There's different models. Some agencies contract with actual therapists. I can understand some concerns, excuse me, with folks about, hey, is what I'm telling that therapist confidential? With EAP programs are different. They reimburse me as a therapist for my practice. I'm responsible for keeping my own notes. They do have a right to, the EAP program does have a right to inspect the file to make sure I'm doing my job, keeping notes. But I'm careful what I put in my notes, and when I first meet with clients, I talk to them a little bit more about it. I my notes are generally, hey, what's the general sense? What's the presenting problem? What are the themes? What are the interventions that we're using? There is a chance with an EAP program, if someone files a workers' compensation claim, that they may want to access that person's records. But when that does happen, the employee signs a release for that, so they know about that. But I'm very willing to talk with clients at whatever length they want to talk about, to make sure that they have a comfort level about what they're seeing me for is kept confidential. It's really rare for a therapist to break confidentiality as well. Therapists get in more trouble breaking confidentiality when they shouldn't than for not breaking confidentiality when they should. So
Gotcha. Yeah, and I appreciate you explaining that. And I think, as you know, one of the big things with our community is that lack of confidentiality and that
yes,
trust, right? Because,
absolutely.
and kind of see it with peer support systems too, where specifically like police officers, if you make any suicidal statements or you say anything that raises the flag, and people are like, "Whoa, all right, now you're on light duty. You're wearing a suit at the front desk. You like."
Right.
We don't want you to have your gun, and then you're away from your team. People are starting to notice something's wrong with Greg, right? I feel like it's a very slippery slope.
It
Um,
is.
and I'm kind of curious to get your opinion on that. If you've seen that before, and if you think it's getting better or what.
Yeah, I think peer support programs do have their place. General sense, coping with the stress of work, staffing shortages, outlets for grievances, and what have you. Um, but fellow officers do not enjoy the privilege of confidentiality. They're still subject to department policy. So if someone makes an admission, maybe there's some domestic violence going at home. It's a real gray area there about what can be kept confidential. Whereas for me, as a therapist, absent there's an immediate need to break confidentiality, like a clear danger to self, a clear danger to others. Child abuse currently occurring or elder abuse currently occurring.
Yeah.
Absent those issues, they're the holder of privilege for that. And I'll also tell clients too, if you're not sure, give me a hypothetical first.
Mm,
But yes, a therapist client confidentiality is very important. Uh, Interesting fact, domestic violence is not reportable on my part. As long as there's no one currently that's going to be in any danger when that client leaves, we can work through domestic violence issues. As we know, in law enforcement, domestic violence comes to the forefront. It can be a real career killer.
a big,
Yeah,
big problem. Yeah, I actually
yeah.
just saw a video of a Miami-Dade police officer who I think he threw something at his wife and out of anger, like towards her direction, and it ended up hitting her. And they cuffed him up and they took him and they went into his unit and grabbed his wallet. And then they were like, dude, we got to take it. Like, it's no joke.
No, no, it's domestic violence is a very serious issue, and just going back to what I find really rewarding about therapy, if we can start to address these relationship issues earlier, because these things don't just happen when we get the badge pinned on. These are things that start in our development and things that we witness growing up, and then how do we change course on these things and make these relationships better so we don't get to that crisis. Yeah,
Yeah, gotcha.
yeah.
And obviously, with your prior first responder and military experience and working with that community, what do you recommend to the listeners out there that are a first responder or service member, and maybe he or she's like, oh, I don't need therapy, like I think everything's fine, or hey, I'll deal with that later on, or when I retire, like that's a later Greg problem. What's kind of your advice?
Yeah, I would caution against dealing with it later because I didn't wait till later on in my career to deal with some issues, and that became a bit more difficult for me.
Mm,
It's good to look at therapy as a place where, hey, where can I just come and vent? Looking at it from that. But also, many times we can think that there's something wrong with us, something problematic with how we're viewing the world. And 99 times out of 100, what a client's bringing up, it's normal. It doesn't feel normal. but to be able to normalize what a person's going through, and then what are some things we can do to maybe not have these cognitive distortions about ourselves, about other people. Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like a majority of the time our communities, the type A, the S on the chest for Superman, you're supposed to be the helper. People call you for help, you don't ask for help, and then you wait till the end of your career, and you're supposed to enjoy retirement and be happy, and then these calls and everything start to come back to you, and you haven't worked on them, and you don't have the peer support, you don't have the EAP, you're not with your
I,
buddies anymore doing the same thing. So I was just curious to get your
yeah, no, it's such an important thing. We even a promotional exam coming up, and maybe we have some anxiety about that. Well, what are some skills I can do before I go into the exam, right? The same skills that can control our anxiety going to an active shooter can work for a promotional exam or for an IA interview or going home and dealing with stress.
yeah.
Just because we go to therapy doesn't mean there's something wrong with this. There's a statistic that says up to 40% of us will have a mental health disorder in our lifetime. And, there's this thing called an adjustment disorder, something difficult within 6 months, causing clinically marked distress in occupational, interpersonal functioning. It's happened within 6 months or currently ongoing. Well, gee, you talk about a death of a loved one, getting involved in an officer involved shooting, a disciplinary issue, divorce. All of those things can cause an adjustment disorder. And it's really one of the questions I always ask clients, maybe not a really good business model for me, but when will you not have to come see me anymore, right? What's kind of the presenting problem that's causing you this distress, and let's get you back to a place where you're feeling kind of better about things. Like for anxiety, for example, I look at a scale of 1 to 10, one being I have no anxiety. I like to say I can get you back to a one, but I can't even get myself back to a one
Yeah,
of anxiety, right? But just get us back to a point where we're able to think rationally,
yeah,
have rational thought, and not have that anxiety get the better of us, and then we revert to some behavior that's not who we are.
sure.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I like it, and it's obviously super important to I think to catch these problems early and work on them often and I do think our community is getting better about getting into therapy and working on yourself. I definitely do think so. And one of the things, and I know I want to touch on, is substance misuse, specifically with alcohol. Right, it's a major problem. We always back when I was with Daly City, we used to get on off our last day of the week and we'd go to choir practice in the parking lot across the
No
street.
choir practice. Yeah.
And then you go to somebody's house for a barbecue, or you go and you're drinking, and you're using alcohol because it's so easily accessible. It's in every household to kind of forget about work or to calm down before you go to sleep after getting off at 07:30. And then same thing for the military community. Like how many times overseas were we all drunk off our asses in the barracks, and it's not healthy. So I know you've seen it a lot with substance misuse. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it.
Yes, it's been a problem for so long. I mean, Joseph Wamba had a book called The Choir Boys, and it's about the choir practice, right?
Mhm.
It's this culture, and myself, I've had my own struggles with alcohol as well, right? I found sobriety very, very helpful. It's maybe not the case for everybody. Some folks can drink and it doesn't cause problems, but when it starts to really cause problems, either with our family or with our job, it's time to take a look at that.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, I've known more officers that died of alcohol and suicide than died of line of duty deaths.
Mhm.
Although I do see the work as contributing to that. It's just absolutely tragic. Um, and if we wait until it becomes a problem that's recognized by the department, it becomes much more difficult versus, you know, just because you want to come in and talk about alcohol use doesn't mean that, you necessarily have a problem, but let's come in, let's talk about that. Let's come up with some goals to make that problem a bit more manageable for you. But it really is a case with the culture. Even now, I am in contact with folks from a number of local agencies and statewide agencies, and it continues to be a problem amongst staff, law enforcement, firefighting, any EMS field, right? When we choose to self medicate, it can be very, very problematic for us.
Yeah, and most recently, the new San Francisco police officer that saw all over the news, right? I think
Right.
he was a brand new or very new officer, and I think it was in the middle of the night, and toxic, like alcohol was definitely involved, and that was a major crash. And
Yes.
yeah,
And just a tragedy for everybody, you know. So yeah, being able to address the problem before it gets that bad,
yeah.
it can be very
Yeah,
helpful.
it's
Yeah.
important because I've seen it firsthand with people where you mask it and you hide it for so long, and then something happens, or you get a DUI or a DUI hit and run, and then that's not a good look, and then your license is suspended, and then you're riding shotgun with one of your buddies because your license is suspended,
Right.
and God forbid you have another one, or everybody's talking shit about you. So then you just continue to, and it's just like a slippery slope, right? It's easier to go down the roller coaster than it is to go
It
up.
it sure is. Yeah. It can definitely be insidious, and it can really creep up on us.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah.
so, what's your opinion? Like when you hear about all this, and when we talk about substance misuse specifically with alcohol in our community, what advice do you have out there for people in the community that may be listening to this and they're like, oh, maybe I should back it down.
Yes. What's helpful is to maybe put our own ego aside, and if we have someone who we trust, to say, do you think that my alcohol or substance use is a problem?
Mm.
If so, how? You maybe find out how it's affecting them, not only ourselves, but how it's affecting those around us too. There's um, instruments you can take. There's the alcohol use disorder scale. You can kind of self-assess to see, but many times when we're close to a problem, if we're leaving it up to ourselves to diagnose, it's not always best. So a trusted third party by um, being able to have an honest conversation with us about it. And the great thing is there's a lot of fantastic resources out there for struggling with alcohol and narcotics. So, but it's a very, very common problem. It's happening. I mean, it'd be nice if we would never have to talk about this problem again, but really, how can we better manage it? Keeping folks on the job, keeping their relationships intact, career survival, career success, very, very important. Not to mention safety to the public and ourselves.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll shout out one Siobhan Thompson with Throttle and Thrive down in Southern California. Great facility for first responders and service members focused on substance misuse and even some of the like the narcotics and illegal drugs as well. Great facility. Done a podcast with her. She was one of our sponsors at the fundraiser. Just a very good resource. So if anybody's listening to this, specifically out in California, we can get you in contact with her. I kind of want to transition to you being a male therapist with prior first responder and military experience. Do you like? Is there a stigma about male therapists? There aren't that many of them. Like, kind of talk me through that.
There may be a stigma about Brian Lawrence in general, but that's probably self-earned.
Yeah.
There's first responder male therapists, not a whole lot of us out there. The therapy field, the pathway to licensure, the education, any therapist that passes the licensing exam is more than qualified to help somebody. But some folks just feel comfortable, talking to someone that's, got a few rings on the old oak tree, as I said before, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, I've actually had some female clients that they would prefer to get a male's perspective on things as well. But there's times when we've had negative experiences with males in our lives, and we may prefer a female therapist. So it's really about fit, but definitely, with my background, there's not quite as many of me out there that is maybe as helpful, because a lot of folks would just feel more helpful talking to someone who's got my background, my qualification, my attributes. So.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean specifically, like if I were to put myself in somebody's shoes that was a SWAT operator at a police department and want to go to therapy, and they listen to this and like you have all this 30 years of LEO experience and you were on the SWAT team and investigations and
Mhm.
all this, you're like, oh, that's a fellow SWAT dude. Maybe I'll be more inclined to go work with him, you know? So,
Right.
uh, I think it's great. And that's why I love what we do at the Overwatch Collective with like our vetting process and ensuring that people are culturally competent, well trained. And then if you have any of that prior first responder experience or veteran experience, that's a double win for us.
No, and thank you. Yes, not only the SWAT experience, but oh, can we talk about IA experience? I've been on both ends, having been the subject of an IA and having done IAs. I've had clients, see me for a lot of distress of what they're going through, and I can absolutely relate to what they're going through. Just again, just to normalize that, folks that are involved in this profession, they don't understand that when you're noticed on discipline, talk about your fight or flight activating. That's emotionally threatening. That's our livelihood. And in some cases worse, we're seeing officers getting charged now, and there's a lot of discussion about that. Is this even proper? What's going on? And there's a lot of righteous distress about what law enforcement is facing now. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah,
at least having
it's
been through
very
that.
difficult. It's very difficult as a cop now, and I think
Extremely so.
Specifically in California, a lot of police officers are getting charged, and with the restriction of policy, and then you're getting charged for some of these crimes. You could be chasing like a 10851 stolen vehicle, and you're like, what's the point of this? This is a property crime, you know. So we start to see people like kind of thinking about it a little bit more and be like this is no good. I'm gonna back out. I'm gonna 1022 the pursuit. You know,
Right.
it's definitely a challenge, and I hate seeing cops that are out there doing good. Stressful situations. You have a second to react to something, and all you want to do is go home to your family, and then you
Right.
end up getting charged. Like it breaks my heart. It's scary.
It it really is. There's the things that happen which we kind of question, why was this person even charged? And then we can see a person on video who maybe steps over the line, but that's not the person we know. Something happened, and something happened to that person emotionally. And we get calls when citizens have the worst days of their lives, and there's days when officers and firefighters are having very, very bad days too. And to be able to recognize ahead of time, what are my early warning signs, and how do I manage that better? So
Yeah,
yeah,
and
it's very
and
difficult nowadays for
Yeah,
first responders.
and the stress is just so there's so much stress in this community, and that's why, and specifically like when you're short staffed too, right? It's very difficult because you're working
Right.
more. So that's when we start to see the burnout, the increased levels of stress, the time away
Absolutely.
from your family, the lack of physical fitness, and ultimately that just kind of leads you down a path of being exhausted and putting your department first, where your mental health is struggling. And then something that I want to get your opinion on is suicide in our first responder and military community. What do you think we need to do better?
Um, Suicide is such a difficult thing because if an officer is 5150, as we know, that ends up being a career killer, right? So my uh, being able to recognize that, what are those early warning signs for myself, and then getting some help right away. Many times the way that society changes how they view our role in law enforcement, we can take that personally. And some of the work that I do is, hey, we put on a role when we go to work. That's why my healthiest assignments were when I had to go to the station and get changed. It's the take home assignments, be a canine officer, motor officer, detective. Yeah, it may be nice to have that take home vehicle, but the organization's getting extra time out of you.
Mhm.
Being able to develop these other parts of ourselves, because if we put it all in the law enforcement basket, eventually we're going to have a lot of disappointment. So we need to develop these other roles. There's this parts theory, I like to call it. We need to develop these other parts of ourselves. But definitely, thoughts of self harm are very, very common. And when that happens, talking to somebody about it. just because you call me up and say you're thinking about hurting yourself doesn't mean that's automatically 5150, right? There's a big difference between, hey, I sometimes feel life isn't worth living, I'm really depressed, I'm disappointed, I feel things are hopeless. The difference between that and saying I'm suicidal, I have a plan and I absolutely intend to carry that out, right?
Sure. Yeah.
When we're starting to feel hopeless. I mean, one of my favorite sayings was from occupied Poland: if you're not depressed, you're stupid, right? I mean, there's a lot of things going on in this world that
Mhm.
are naturally going to depress us. So recognizing when that happens and just talking to someone, especially if you can go through an EAP program. As you mentioned, 15-minute phone consult. Someone doesn't have to give me their name, right? They can just call, say, hey, I'm a police officer or firefighter. I've got these things going on, and let's at least just start the conversation.
Yeah.
And to know that you're not alone. We have to be careful with isolating, thinking that we're all alone. We have to try to let other people into our lives and not try to experience these things ourselves.
Yeah. And talking is free, essentially, right? Like,
Talking is free. It sure is. They call therapy the talking cure. I, I like to take credit for my clients' successes, but I can't. All I do is walk alongside, provide some options, provide some skills, and it's really up to the clients to put these things to use. And then this magical thing happens. Brian, who was helped by therapists years and years ago, is now in a position to help others. And hopefully, someone I'm helping down the road when I'm too old to do this anymore, they're going to pick up the torch. And uh, I think it was the 4th Infantry Division said, watch your lane, try to improve your piece of the army, right? And try to improve your piece of the field. Don't try to change the whole thing. Try to have an impact where we can.
very cool. Yeah, I
Mm.
like it. I like it a lot. What else do you want to touch on really quick? Got a few more minutes here, and the floor is kind of yours. Whatever else you want to say, or what you think people might want or need to know.
You know, the pendulum swings, right? Very few things are static, and I think even here in the lovely Bay Area, things seem to be changing a little bit. It's important to have a sense of hope and optimism for ourselves, but to watch out for each other too. Uh, Police departments tend to not be the most emotionally supportive places on the face of the planet, and we can tend to want to shoot our own wounded. And it's really careful if we have someone that we're working with that's having a hard time.
Mhm.
Uh, Try to have a little compassion, have a little empathy, and see if you can just come alongside that person, right? We may not agree with what's going on. We may not agree with what the person's done. We're not here to excuse what people do, but we're here to explain what we do from our human behavior. And we're all flawed, Brian Lawrence included. And thank God I've had people in my life that have accepted me and didn't turn their back on me, and therefore uh, for me to continue to do that too. But we got to take care of each other. Having been in administration has a role, but just as as much as we can communicate to staff what's happening and right, giving some information. I understand confidentiality with a disciplinary process,
Mhm.
but you know, to be able to learn from some of these tragedies that happen. However, we can do that within the confines of personnel rules and laws.
Yeah, and like I said, I think the pendulum's swinging in the right direction. It's just
I
so
do too.
frustrating when you hear about these death by suicides in our community still, right? Like, I think it's LA County SO has had 13 under the sheriff's watch or something.
Yeah.
I could be wrong there, but significant problem, right? And in my opinion, if you have one and you're a captain or chief, you're head honcho, you got to take a look in the mirror and be like, what am I doing for my people?
One is too many. Absolutely right. And it's interesting too because when you I forget the name of the gentleman, but I think his documentary I survived jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. I forget his name. He just yeah,
I did a
just
podcast with him. Yeah, good
yeah,
dude.
fantastic story. And he says, as soon as I jumped, I regretted it.
Mhm.
So just know if you're thinking about that, or if you have a staff member, hey, let's at least talk about what does it hurt to talk about to try to find a different solution, right? But Losing personnel for any reason, particularly suicide, is just an abject tragedy, and we need to do the best we can to obviously protect the confidentiality of the person, but what can we do differently? Letting folks know that they have employee assistance programs available, right? I'll go and talk to agencies and tell them that, hey, your agency has this EAP program, and they won't even be aware of that. So
That's
yeah,
such a problem.
yeah, and it's free sessions. Get your money back from the city. Come and talk to me. Hey, it doesn't cost you anything, and at least start that ball rolling. Start
Mhm.
that process towards being able to adjust to things a bit better.
Yeah, I think there definitely needs to be a more proactive approach in the awareness and what resources they have, and not only them, but the spouses and others, the family members as well. So
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
and I understand the difficulty from a department role, right? Because if a person says something, then you have to act, but you can still present the resources. You can talk in general sense, and then encourage folks to reach out on their own before it gets to that point. Because uh, once we start to hide because we're afraid of our career, that can really cause a really tragic downward spiral. We want to get to the problem before it reaches that point.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So if you're out there listening to this, obviously this is a great conversation with Brian, and I appreciate you coming on and explaining some of the key things that we're seeing in our community that are still needing improvement. Um, and then obviously giving an explanation of yourself, your background, your training, and all that. So kind of how we wrap up our episodes is our motto at the Overwatch Collective is one more is one less.
absolutely.
Comes from a prior Army dude, just like yourself.
Yeah,
Season
raw.
one, episode 6, unfortunately lost more friends to suicide upon return stateside than actually overseas.
Right.
Uh, so from there, it kind of stuck. So it's on our t-shirts, our challenge coins,
It
and we
sure
have
is.
what one more is one less means to our guests at the end of every episode. So you're in the hot seat. Usually when I have two people, I'll have them Rochambeau or kind of do something fun. But up to you. No rush, but I'd love to hear what one more is one less means to you.
It's really true, right? Suicide is absolutely preventable, and to be able to be a resource for folks, to let someone know that they're not alone, right? I mean, if a person's become okay with death, well, let's put that aside and let's just give something a try. Let's give it a try. Yeah. Because you never know what tomorrow will hold. Remember what that gentleman said. As soon as he jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge, he regretted it. And I really think that's true. And you don't have to be alone if you don't want to. There are folks that you can reach out to for help, myself included.
Yeah, awesome. No,
Yeah.
I appreciate you, and that's the whole goal for the Overwatch Collective ever since we started is if you're out there and you're worried about your fire department, police department, military unit, and you don't know where to go, come to us. We'll get you connected to people like Brian, and uh,
Absolutely.
it's
Yeah,
great.
just know that you don't have to go through this alone.
Yeah, cool. All righty. Well, this wraps up season 8, episode 13. Brian, thank you for your service in the Army, your
Thank you,
police
Greg.
service to the Bay Area, and then obviously now continuing to help people and people within our own community. So it's an honor to have you as one of our contracted therapists. I appreciate you and your work, being available for us, working with our board of directors, and being a resource. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, and thank you again for the work that you do. It's so vital. It's like crime prevention. You'll never know the crimes that you prevented. You'll never know the suicides that you prevented by what you do. So thank you to you and the Overwatch Club.
Well, it's a very cool way of putting it. I like that.
Yeah, you bet.
Great. All right, everybody. And then if you want to get connected to Brian, he's on our website. Go to the overwatchcollective.com, go to therapist, click on the state of California, scroll down, I think 7 or 8.
Seven
And
or eight. Oh man, that's how I rate, huh?
yeah, there's like over 20 in California. It's insane.
Oh, then I should feel pretty happy then. It
Yeah,
was probably alphabetical. That's
actually,
why.
no, it's not. It's not. Yeah, you're that good, you're that good.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well,
Yeah, of course.
thank you again for having me, Greg.
Of course. All right, everybody, take care. Hope you enjoyed the episode, and God bless America.
Take care, everybody out there. Take care of yourselves.